G'day guys, Googs here. You're welcome to The Drunk Philosopher. This is the third video now because people, for some reason, don't seem to understand why the protests ultimately won't work. I've had quite a few conversations now across social media platforms and at various people I know who don't seem to get why the protests actually ultimately won't work. Yeah, politicians are an angle. Absolutely, because politicians can't do anything because you're not telling them to do anything, right? We want you to save the environment. They don't know how to do that. They can't do that. It's not like other social issues in the past, like in the 60s, like the equality movement. It's nothing like that because they wanted law. Now, politicians are pretty good at writing laws and passing laws. That's kind of part of what they do. So Martin Luther King Jr. and all the other equality people, the freedom feminists and whatnot, all pushed really hard. Lots of people joined in and said, this is what we want. And the government passed those laws. Same thing happened here in Australia a couple of years ago with gay marriage, with the plebiscite. The people's will was, there's no reason why gay people can't get married. And that's fine. That's the will of the people, right? Vietnam, Australia and America, mass protests everywhere. Bring the boys home, stop the baby killing. That's exactly what the government did, right? In Australia and America, they brought the boys home. This is very different. It isn't a social issue. It isn't a legal issue, and it's nothing the government can directly control. Okay? They cannot directly control the CO2 in the air when they do not own the companies that do it. And even if they did, we haven't got the right technology, right? This is why I keep saying nuclear power. If we're going to protest, go, right, government, we want nuclear power in this country. Legalise nuclear power in Australia. That makes sense. That's something practically we can do as a populace. And the technology exists, we can do that. But to come out and say, Mr. Government, we want you to fix this and we're not going to tell you what we want. And the reason everybody is doing this is because it's not a social issue. It's a scientific issue. The science isn't there yet. That's the first issue I see, right? And that's number one. And by the way, that's my number one reason why I don't think the protests work. The science doesn't exist yet to stop waste, to not require oil and other things mined out of the earth, other minerals and chemicals to be made from them. And the processes of making those chemicals lets off God knows what gases into the atmosphere. This is the problem. Scientifically, we're not there. So it's not a social issue. It's a scientific one. But that's the first issue. And the second issue is this. Since when has science been about prophecy? It's not about prophecy. You see, the scientists go, well, we think, or we hypothesize, we theorize in 20 years' time, the water levels in the ocean are going to raise by 5 centimeters and it's going to cause this, and this. But we think, we theorize, we hypothesize because the scientists don't know. They're not prophets. Science isn't a religion. These people are going, well, this is based on the best evidence we have at this point in time. We believe this is going to be the outcome, but they can't prove that because, well, nobody's got a time machine. They can only go on the data they've got. And so all these people who come out and go, it's 12 years, it's 14 years, it's 16 years. And scientists like Brian Cox and dickheads like Al Gore come out and they, instead of going, the latest theory is that this might happen in 20 years' time, they go, oh, this is going to happen. The latest scientific data says, no, it doesn't. It's a fucking theory. It's a hypothesis. It's not a guess because it's well and truly way more educated than that with the data sets they've got. But these people aren't prophets. Scientists are not prophets. They're not high priests listening to some god called information technologies and shit like this. They're human beings and they can only work with the data they've got to make their guess. And that's what it is. It's hypothesis. It's a theory, but it's presented to the people, you and me, as if it is going to happen. It's set in stone. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. In 2024, the large asteroid Apophis is going to come between the Earth and the Moon. It's a very large asteroid, okay? Now, we don't know. With all the data in the world, the scientists don't know if it's going to catch into Earth's orbit or crash into the moon or just pass on by. And then it's coming back about 12 years later, okay, 2036, something like that. And they have no idea where it's going to be. We know there's going to be something, and there's a potential both times that it's going to crash into the Earth. But it's a potential, it's a theory, it's a hypothesis. And to whatever percentage the scientists give it is about as close as they understand with the math they've got and with the numbers they've got. We need to stop panicking. We really need to stop panicking. And we need to understand that these possible futures that the scientists are theorizing with the information they've got may not occur. And it hasn't during my lifetime, okay? In the 80s, I was told by 2020 that we're going to have 5 centimetres up. We're not 5 centimetres up. In fact, from that time, we're about 1.5 centimetres up in ocean, all right? Now, is it a good thing it's rising? No. It's rising. But the theory was wrong. Why? Because the data set they had was incomplete. And that's the other thing. The Earth and all the systems that function towards going into climate on this planet are insanely complex, like beyond complex. You have to take into account the trees. You have to take into account what kind of trees they are. And we haven't even discovered, I don't think we would have even discovered every species of tree yet. You've got the ocean currents and how that all plays into it, and the volcanoes and the Pacific Rim and the earthquakes and shit. Man, it's so complex. I mean, I can't obviously fathom it. And the scientists haven't yet got a complete data set, so they don't know either. Not just that, but it's been around a bloody long time. We've been keeping accurate data, let's just say for 200 years on climate. We can get a bit of an idea of what happened 20,000 years ago from an ice sample core and that part of the world, right? But it doesn't tell us exactly everything that was going on. So the scientists, with their best data, try to predict. They try to hypothesize, this is where we think we're going to be. But if you've ever read a paper on it, it doesn't say, we know that by the year 2036 or 38, water will cover 90% of the face of the Earth. I mean, that's an outrageous hyperbolic prediction. I'll never say that. It's a theory. It's a we think, not a it is. People need to stop listening to the Al Gores of this world because they're in it for the money. Brian Cox, in it for the money. All right? He's a pop star before he was a physicist, right? And this is making him really popular, and people are buying into the ideas of Brian Cox. And there's no need for it. Yes, we can do something about climate change. And if you're in Australia, if I was an activist, the next protest I'll be going, we want nuclear power because it's better and cleaner than coal. Make a point. Say this is what we actually want. You want to see some change? The government can change the law to take off the moratorium for nuclear power in this country. That's something they can do. So aim for something legitimate that we can change. All right? Anyway, I'm Nathan Gooks Fletcher. This is My Drunk Philosophy, and I'll catch you guys down the road. Uru.